Hello my lovely people! This video has nothing to do with the way I look. Today, finally, long-awaited video about how I learn Korean, what are my tips for studying Korean, all that stuff. Let's get into it right now. This video is probably going to be a bit long, so I'm going to put timestamps so you can follow up. But in short, in today's video, I will tell you about my background and how I became fluent in Korean, help you understand learning style and which learning style is most suitable for you, offer some learning methods and qualitative learning tools, give a brief overview of habit formation and how that can help foster your learning, and give you some other tips to help you gain the knowledge and confidence so you can also learn a new language in the most quick and pleasurable way. So let's get into it. Briefly about me. Hi, my name is Maria. I've been living in Korea for more than 6 years. I first got here back in 2013 as an exchange student. Prior to that, I had studied Korean on my own for around 2 months. Then I found a private tutor and I learned basic Korean for around, let's say, 10 lessons. And then immediately I knew that if I really want to learn this language, I have to come to Korea and actually be surrounded by Korean people, surrounded by Korean culture to actually learn in a more productive way. So that's what I did. I found an opportunity. I came to Daegu, I came to Gyeongbok National University. I studied in Gyeongbok National University for exactly 1 year. I took all the classes I could possibly put into my schedule, in addition to the classes that I have to take for my major, because studying Korean was something I wanted to do for myself and it has nothing to do with my actual major. In order to get as many classes as possible, I had to mix levels because it was not possible to get level 2, level 3 classes. So I was taking level 2 and level 4, and then next semester I was taking level 3 and writing. And I also took a class, cultural studies, about cultural differences. After my study year abroad, I have to go back to Latvia. I spent 1.5 years in Latvia, and then I moved back to Korea in 2015, and I have been living here since 2015. In 2015, I took a intensive course of studying Korean. I was put in level 4, and for 1 semester I took 5-hour lessons a day, covering all from reading, writing, listening, speaking, and culture. And then recently I decided that I want to change my visa to a permanent resident one. And if you want this visa, there are classes you have to take and there are tests you have to pass in order to apply for it. So I went to the level placement test. I was put in level 4, which is the last language level, because level 5 is the last level and that is only about Korean culture and history. So I was placed in the last language level, but I still haven't passed the test because of COVID. Basically, this is where I'm at this moment. Now let's get into how to actually learn a language. First of all, you need to know what learning style is best suitable for you, because not every person can learn in the same way and get the same results. So first of all, you have to figure out what type of learner you are. So there are 4 learning styles: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. I think they are quite self-explanatory, but if you're not sure, I'm gonna put short description so you can have more info and figure out what is the best learning way for you. If you're completely lost and you have no idea what I'm talking about, think of it that way. When you learn any fact, or simply if you meet a new person and they tell you your name, do you remember the name? No? Then you're probably not an auditory learner, because an auditory learner only needs to listen and they will remember. As for me, I'm a visual learner. If I hear someone's name, in seconds it's gone. For me, something like Facebook or Instagram helps. When I have visually their picture and their name together and I can see it, and then it sticks in my visual memory and I can remember it later on. Other people need to write down the name, and because they wrote it with their own hand, they're gonna remember it. So this is what these learning styles are all about. What suits you and what makes you remember the information that you are given. I would like to suggest combining all the learning styles. Just keep that in mind before you start learning anything, because that is very important and that's gonna really make the difference whether you're successful at learning new things or you struggle with them. Maybe this is the reason. Moving on, you decided that you want to learn Korean. First thing you have to do is get a very nice thick notebook that is only for studying Korean. If you're one of those people who are like, oh, I'm just gonna write my new words on the side of my planner or on a stick-on note and put it somewhere in front of me, you're not gonna remember it. You won't have it in one place. You will not go back to it and revise it. It's just not gonna work. It's not a good system. So what you need to do is get a notebook, beautiful notebook. First of all, it's going to inspire you to learn. Second of all, it's a commitment, so you know that you have to fill these pages. And this is a great way to make sure that you have all of your information in one place. You know where to go back to it, so you can revise, so you can add information, so you can check whatever you want to check. If you have everything in one notebook, that is amazing. It's going to really help you in your learning journey. After all this blabbering, how I learned Korean. First of all, get a notebook. Second of all, the best site that I want to recommend is talktomeInKorean.com. It is an amazing site. They have the best grammar lessons I've ever seen in any internet site or books ever, because what they do is they really focus on everyday communication and words, phrases, grammar that you actually need. So once you get your notebook, go to talktomeInKorean.com and study all their grammar lessons. What I mean by study, so you open talktomeInKorean.com, you open the first level, first lesson, you open the PDF in front of you and you press play for the audio lesson, because they have audio lessons for every single level, for every single lesson. So first of all, just read it, then listen and read it together, then read it out loud, and then write everything in your notebook while reading it out loud. If you forgot how to pronounce something, listen it as you're writing it. This is how you combine the learning styles. You're not just listening, you're not just reading, you're not just writing, you're not just speaking. You're doing all of it at once. So that is the best way to make sure that you are making your body remember it, your mouth remember it, your ears remember it, your brain remember it, your fingers remember it. You remember it. So as for me, every time I finished one of those lessons, I wasn't like, okay, let's call it a day. The same grammar or the same word I will look up in other sites, in other sources. I will type in 을 거예요 grammar or 을 수 있어요 grammar. And then you can see a lot of sites with a lot of example sentences, more explanations in Korean, more explanations in English or whatever language you're learning in. And make sure you write down those example sentences as well. So for example, if in Talk to Me in Korean they had like 5 or 10 example sentences, you will go to Google, you will go to other sources, and you will write down 5 more from this page, 5 more from this page. Then what you want to do is write down at least 10 sentences with this word, with this new grammar structure, whatever that is that you're learning, and write these sentences about your life. Sentences that you can actually picture yourself saying, something you know you will need how to say at one point when you talk to a new person. So at first these are going to be things about you, your personality, your job, your hobbies, the way you think, whatever that is. Just make sure you make at least 10 example sentences that you know you're going to be saying at some point. So this way, the thing you just learn actually is useful. It's not just a random sentence about someone else's experiences, it's a sentence about you, for you, that you will definitely need to use. And that is the main thing that helps you learn Korean. That is the main thing that helped me, because I didn't just learn this grammar structure or that new vocabulary. I actually learned sentences for my own life, from my own experiences that I can actually tell people. So I already had these sentences memorized in my head. So when I had this situation and oh, this sentence works in this situation, I'm gonna practice it and I'm gonna speak it out loud. And this is what really helps you learn long term. And after you have written those 10 sentences, always make sure you leave at least half a page or a full page after each new grammar structure or whatever you're learning at that point, because there will be time when you reach higher levels of grammar and you will start finding out similar grammar structures or similar words. Then you will go back to the previous and write down that similar grammar structure as well. So just make this system that you write the lesson, you write example sentences from different sources and more explanations and more point of view on this, and that will really create this deeper understanding of this grammar structure, in what situations to use it, how to use it, and how to use it about your own life. And this is what actually creates your vocabulary and allows you to communicate all of this with other people. The more sources, the more different point of view you have about one grammar structure, about one thing that you are learning, you get, and therefore you create a deeper understanding of this thing that you are learning. It all contributes to the likelihood that you will understand it, you will know how to use it, in which situation use it, and you will be able to actually use it in your own life. Another thing that is very important when you start to learn anything, and language learning included, is forming habits when to study. Let's talk about habit formation. This is the most important thing when you study something new, especially if you want to study this by yourself, because it is possible to learn Korean by yourself. You don't actually need a teacher, you don't need a class. If you have a good learning structure and you have very well established habits, you can easily learn Korean by yourself. What I mean by habit formation is knowing not only what you're gonna do, because if you just tell yourself, I'm gonna study more Korean, or from now on, I'm gonna study Korean, those are empty words. It's just a very vague sentence. So when forming a new habit that is learning Korean, you have to tell yourself when you're going to be studying, meaning which day and what time precisely are you going to have this new habit. Because if you just tell yourself, I'm gonna study when I have time, it's never gonna happen, because it's not a precise idea, you know? Your head cannot remember that it's now time to study. You have to make this automatic. Another thing that is very important for creating this new habit is to have it easily accessible. If you have this notebook and you put it in your deepest drawer, something out of your eyes, you're probably not gonna pick it up. But if you keep this new notebook somewhere when you can see it, somewhere where it's easily accessible, your eyes are always gonna see it in your room, and your brain will remind you to study Korean. So whatever you want to learn and whatever you change you want to make in your life, make sure you make a habit of it. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is not how many hours you studied, but how consistent you were. Did you study 5 hours on Monday and then didn't study for 3 weeks and then study 5 hours on a random Wednesday? Or did you study 20 minutes every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Or you studied 1 hour every Wednesday and Friday? Whatever works for you, make sure that this is a constant habit, because showing up and being constant is what creates progress. Not time, but being constant, making your brain create these new pathways, thinking about Korean, thinking about the new words and structures that you're learning. That is what is important, and not the hours you spend studying. If you don't really understand the concept of creating habits, you can think about habits that you already have in your life and try to stick this new habit of learning Korean onto already existing habit. Think about your schedule and where you have windows of opportunity. For example, every Tuesday I come back home at 3 p.m. and I usually have dinner around 5 p.m. and then go to sleep at like 10 p.m. Whatever is your routine, think about which of these points in your routine you can stick this habit on. So for example, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 hour before dinner, I'm going to study Korean. You know, any habit that you have in your life, whatever are the things that you do as a routine, always on certain times and certain days, try to stick this new habit onto already existing habit. Let's say you have your morning coffee. Why not add this to the list? So when I have my morning coffee, I will revise the Korean that I learned. Whatever your habits is, just build onto your existing habits, and that is gonna make it more likely for you to come back to Korean and actually improve your learning and go on with your learning journey. If you can automate any habit that will help you learn Korean, do that as well. For example, there are a lot of apps where you get daily reminders or daily new words to learn. Those are great because you're not even thinking about it. It's always gonna pop up in your phone. So every day new word will pop up in your phone. Make sure as soon as it pops up, you write down it on your notebook and you write an example sentence with it in your notebook. Things like that, just habits that happen every single day or every certain day that you decided you're gonna study Korean on that day. Another tip is just make sure you surround yourself with Korean culture, with listening. The more words you learn, the more you will hear them everywhere around you. When you're listening Korean music, you're watching Korean dramas. You know what I mean? Every time you're listening something, just make sure you're listening Korean language a lot as you're learning. Listen to a lot of people speak. But one tip I would like to give you about listening is don't just listen random things. Listen to the same thing over and over and over and over again. That's gonna really help you understand the flow of the language, the grammar of the language, how you have to speak, how you have to put emphasis on certain words. All of it is gonna be a lot easier to grasp if you make a habit of listening the same things over and over again and really focusing your attention to it while you're listening. When it comes to Korean dramas, I would suggest you use, for example, Netflix or somewhere or someplace where you can turn off the captions. So pick your favorite drama if you have one, First time you watch it with subtitles, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time you watch it without subtitles. Every next time that you're gonna watch this episode, you're gonna understand and catch up on more and more new words. You're gonna hear a lot more words that you have previously learned, and it's just gonna help you learn a lot quicker if you don't read the subtitles, because if your brain knows that the subtitles are the fastest way to understand, it just automatically goes to the subtitles. And where, yes, it's gonna help you learn in some way, it's gonna help you learn slower than if you really focus and try to understand without the subtitles. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you have a chance to speak Korean as much as you can. I'm a perfectionist, so I had this trouble for a few months where I wouldn't speak unless I knew that I'm speaking grammatically correct sentence in the perfect pronunciation. Unless I knew that, I wouldn't say what I want to say. And I did it for quite a few months until I realized that I was always hanging out with these Chinese girls and they did not give a shit. They would speak their most F-up Korean I've ever heard, but they didn't care. They just wanted to communicate, they wanted to tell what I want to say, and they did not care that they are speaking incorrect sentences. And in my head, I caught myself correcting every single sentence that they're making in my head. I wouldn't just, really comment it on while we were there, but in my head, I was correcting every single sentence. So I caught myself doing this, and I was like, Maria, if you can correct all of their sentences, then you should be the one speaking as well. So that kind of helped me get over it. So I want to remind you to not be afraid of making mistakes. And if you're going to Korea to study Korean, or if you're currently in Korea, make sure you surround yourself with Koreans who do not speak English. Because if you hang out with other exchange students, other foreigners, or Koreans who speak perfect English, as soon as there's a word you can't say or you don't understand something in Korean, they're gonna switch to English to make you understand. Most people do, because that is easier and we just want to get on with our conversation, but it's not going to actually help you. So what you want to do is surround yourself with Korean people who do not speak English. That way, when you don't understand something, instead of just giving you the translation, they're going to give you 5 other sentences that are easier to understand that one sentence that you didn't understand. So you're getting so much more knowledge and so much more understanding of the language and like synonyms and stuff that it's gonna really benefit your learning experience. That is what I did. I came to Korea on my own. I didn't know anyone. I tried to spend as much time as I can with my buddy. I would ask her questions. I had notebooks. I was always writing down everything. If I didn't know a word, I would ask people. If I was partying, I will ask questions, like anything to help me learn Korean faster. So that is pretty much all that comes to my mind on top of my head. I probably didn't mention something. If something comes to my mind, I'll put it in the description. And if you have other cool tips or learning tools that have come out, because when I started learning, I had no apps. I just relied on books and Talk to Me in Korean and talking and like the information I got from my university. So if you have any other cool tools, please share them in the comments below to help other people learn Korean too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was useful. If you have any questions about my journey, any questions at all about Korean language, Korean culture, anything at all, make sure you leave them in the comments and I will get back to you. So have a lovely rest of your day. I'm gonna see you soon. 안녕.